supply to your home, at least for the next few months or the interim period. We heard on PM Express on the Joy News channel during at just about 10 p.m. when the show was about to end that indeed the concessionaire agreements that government had entered between Power Distribution Services, PDS, and Government of Ghana has been suspended temporarily. Listen to Kojo Oppong-Nkrumah, Information Minister, confirming this with my colleague, Evans Mensah.
We have just released a statement tonight, essentially that government has suspended the concession agreement that was given to PDS because we have detected some anomalies with the guarantee instruments that they made available. Just a few minutes ago, my assistant released that message, so that information will be correct.
What are these anomalies?
Well, we have detected some anomalies specific to the guarantees that were issued by the consortium of PDS.
Okay.
And our first obligation is to secure the assets, particularly the cash assets, etc. And suspend.
Let's break this down because you say guarantees. People are listening and watching. What it means is that they came and said we have guarantees to provide the monies and investments, correct?
Yes.
To bring to deal with the sector.
Yes, and also the assets that we were handing over to them. And the risk that was involved, they provided some guarantees for that through a number of insurance companies. We have, through due diligence, detected that there are issues with those guarantees that were provided.
So as in what? They were not available?
Well,
they misled us?
They were not valid. Okay.
That's misleading.
Well, it is being investigated currently, so I won't proceed to call it so. They were not valid, and as a result, we have taken a first step to secure the assets of the state by suspending the concession agreement and ensuring that the assets are secured. The Energy Commission has also quickly moved to revoke their distribution license and allow ECG to literally go back to work and perform on that side while we go into a full-scale inquiry into the validity of.
So as we speak tonight, ECG is back in control of that whole sector,
of the distribution sector. PDS is suspended. That's a statement we just issued.
Okay, but you missed how do we miss that? You said we now
there are conditions precedent, then there's due diligence even before.
The due diligence is what
alerted
this.
Alerted us.
But why didn't you do that before?
Because there are conditions precedent and then there are conditions subsequent. Okay. So in the beginning, there are a number of things, and also because of the deadline that we had at the time, there are a number of things that they were supposed to meet, which they did, and then it goes through a due diligence phase. It is this due diligence that has alerted us to the fact that the validity of some of the guarantees are in question, and we've moved therefore to suspend it pending a full-scale inquiry.
Over ECG. These conditions, and it's instructive to know that these are two of the most important conditions. You need to deposit to the person that's leasing an institution to you to guard against, for example, if they don't get their money back and all of that, to show that you are in the position to even run the institution in this particular case. What was being requested of PDS as a grouping, and I will break down PDS for you to understand every part of it.
Okay.
So that you also know that it's not like PDS is one single body that all of a sudden came up from somewhere. There are different institutions that put together to form the PDS. So what has happened is that there was a problem with the demand guarantees. And demand guarantees, there are two. The lease payment security and the BSA payment security, which was submitted by PDS to MIDA in fulfillment of the two major conditions precedent to the transfer date. They are normally, if authenticated, as in the problem we are talking about, is significant enough to nullify the entire concession. And again, the letter from the government says suspension, because that particular verification is what they are doing today. Now, following the transfer of ECG's assets and operations to PDS on the 1st of March, ECG, the old ECG, and I think we've explained here before that we didn't give entirety of ECG to ECG, to PDS.
Yeah.
There's still an institution existing today as ECG. Recall that when PDS actually was supposed to have been owing IPP some amount of money, PDS asked them to go to ECG.
Because it had paid the monies.
Very good. To ECG.
Exactly.
In this particular case. So that ECG is the one that decided to do some due diligence. Now, they needed to go back to now check all the things that have been done and sent them. What happened was that the beneficiary of the demand guarantees, that's the ECG, subjected the guarantees by PDS to further due diligence tests. By this, they received a letter from the insurers, in this case, our court, which was dated the 16th of July 2019. This is like some 2 weeks ago. And the letter claims, among other things, that the officer who executed, as in signed from our court, is not authorized. So it is just like we're saying that you go to a bank and you're supposed to be giving some loan. You went and the guy who gave you the loan is not qualified to even sign the document. Yet, you have a letter from the same gentleman. Your basis for getting the loan now is doubted. And your basis for whatever transaction you've done with the loan is equally doubted in this case. Now, the person is not authorized, so the guarantees, which are conditions or which are like the basis for which you can continue with the concessionary agreement with PDS, are null and void. Now, the letter also says that the officer had committed fraud, criminal conduct, fraud.
That particular person.
Yes. Since this information was brought to the attention of the ECG and MEDA in this particular case, this is when they got to know on the 28th of July. 28th is just this weekend, Sunday. Meetings have been held to discuss the related issues with the Ministry of Finance, ECG, and the President of the Republic of Ghana.
Okay.
Now, those meetings, of course, the two of the meetings were under the chairmanship of the Energy Minister, the Honorable John Peter Amewu. And other groupings attended: ECG, PDS, Car Bank, Downwell Insurance, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy, MEDA, MCC, and other groupings too. Now, the specific indications are there. Stakeholders were briefed about the unfortunate and very negative development and the need to visit Qatar. Qatar is where our court is. To see the reinsurer to verify the information received. The government has decided to cross the information contained in the disclaimer letter by sending a delegation of stakeholders to Doha, Qatar, today, 31st of July, Wednesday, to meet with officials from our court. Prior to this trip by the government delegation and their reports, the government has decided as a precautionary measure to set aside the concession agreement with effect from yesterday. Now, the other point I needed to also make to you is, what is the PDS and where did they come from? You recall that on August 5th, 2014, the government of Ghana executed the second Millennium Challenge Compact with the U.S. government with the objective of increasing private sector investment and the productivity and profitability of micro, small, and medium-scale enterprises in the country. Among the 6 projects which the second compact was supposed to execute, that's MEDA, was the ECG Financial and Operational Turnaround Project, which sought to provide a private sector participation in the management or operation of the ECG. Effectively, they said ECG could not collect the money it was supposed to be collecting people. Its tail end, where it was interfacing with the people, where it was collecting the amount of money it's supposed to collect from you, was terrible. So that part needed to be replaced. And now they separated ownership from private sector participation. Hope you get what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Then the government of Ghana, under the auspices of MEDA, embarked on a competitive procurement process and resulted in the selection of acceptable partner to manage, operate, and invest in ECG's operations. A key note there is invest in ECG's operations for 20 years. The Morocco-led consortium was declared the winning bidder on 20th of April 2018. Now, I wanted to put in just the Miracle. Miracle partnered Energia SA, an Angolan company, and 3 Ghanaian companies, TG Energy Solutions Ghana Limited, Santa Power Limited, and GTS Power Limited, to form the Power Distribution Services Limited. That's what I told you, which is 51% of the Ghanaian owned, as required by the government of Ghana. Specifically, the directors of the ECG, as under PDS, were, and the incorporation was 29 June 2018. The commencement date was 29 June 2018. Philip Ayesu, Fred Asamani, Kwame Na Edu, Kwame Banfo Ofosu, Oscar Reyes, William Paminchuan, Kojo Anda, Charles Buckner, and Erino Akuna. The shareholders of PDS are in this form. TG Energy Solutions is 560,000 shares.
What's the percentage?
I mean, I can't immediately compute it, but it's the second highest, actually. The highest is Meridian Power Ventures, which is 600,000 shares. Energia SA, the Angolan company, is 380,000 shares. GTS Power Limited is 200,000 shares. And Santa Power Limited is 260,000 shares in this case. So that's the shareholding structure of PDS as currently exists.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Raymond. So that takes us to what has happened and what PDS is, what's brought PDS about, and who owns PDS. Okay, let's go on the phone lines now to speak with Dr. Charles Rekubobe. He's a retired engineer and former VRA boss. Dr. Charles Rekubobe, pardon me. Good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
So what are your initial comments on what has happened, this change in the concessionaire agreement?
My initial comments are encapsulated by my tweet of this morning, in the sense that I think this whole thing has been on the drawing board for a very long time, but in the end, the dithering led to the fact that certain deadlines had to be met or everything fell apart. And therefore, in rushing to meet the deadline, certain due diligences which should have been normally have been assured were not assured. And so you're kind of seeking to verify whether certain assurances were there after the fact. And so that is what has brought this up. And it's a big hiccup, but hopefully it can be resolved.
We'll come to the resolution in just a moment. But when you say it's because we were rushing to the deadline, what do you mean?
Your correspondent talked about MEDA and the support from the MCA. This second compact had been going for quite a long time, and several studies had been taken. And unlike us, for whom time doesn't really make any difference, certain governments, and certainly the U.S. government, goes by timelines by which certain expenditure that they are prepared to spend must come to an end or go back to chest. And so all the dilly-dallying with the MCA second compact and the changes in structures and who should do what came to a head when really we're forced to take certain decisions, including signing on, I think, March of last year or this year, when indeed certain preconditions, not only were they necessary, but they had not been satisfied and verified.
So, Doc, I know that these conversations began way back in 2014, 2015. Yeah. So what exactly caused this delay from where you sit?
From where I sit, I think you could blame government's inaction, because there's been a lot of tussle about whether this whole arrangement is good for Ghana, it's not good for Ghana, whether people were comfortable with the idea that a private sector company originally from outside of this country would come and run our ECG or electricity distribution system. And I must put it on record that, I mean, the ECG problems are vast and many, and it requires intervention to be resolved. But the process was just dragging and dragging and dragging, mainly due to slow or very reluctant actions by governments, not governments.
There was a major change in policy after the 2016 election when the NPP administration decided to give 51% of the concession to local shareholders. Do you think that this has contributed to where we are now?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because I don't really have a cause and effect relationship. But the issue was that once that decision was taken, a lot of the people interested in actually bidding for the concession pulled out. So in the end, you were really, and I think one was disqualified. So in the end, you were left with just a single provider to be considered. There's no doubt that it may have contributed to the delay, but I wouldn't say that. I think the biggest contributor was the fact that the deadline for the MCA was fast approaching. And you remember that the CEOs of the MCA were changed in midstream. The old CEO who handled the first compact was brought back into the scene and had to ensure that this whole thing was delivered before the Americans pulled out their money. And I think that rush, plus certain background noises to do with tariffs and other such related things, was the result of what has come to roost today, and that you didn't have enough time to do the checks that you should have done necessarily before a handover date.
Doc, the information we have is that a delegation is going to Qatar today to work out this issue with the due diligence they should have done with the guarantees that were provided. Do you think that this, what you call the drama that happened last night, was necessary, considering the fact that there's still work ongoing to verify the risk, the guarantee? Sorry.
I think I'm an engineer, not a lawyer, but I suspect that last night's announcement was more to do with defending the country's legal position. And if indeed the matter, that's why it was not cancelled. If the matter is resolved, then suspension can be lifted quite quickly. I don't think materially changes things on the ground, because part of the whole arrangement was that predominantly all the staff who were working for ECG's distribution operations would still be working for PDS. So I don't think we as consumers should see very much, one hopes. But I think one of the things that maybe it's the background which I could chip in, this whole thing and the drive and the rush involved an investment of $500 million under the MCA. Daniel, we have just up to now spent about 12 going to 13 billion Ghana cedis of our own money trying to deal with our banks. So I'm not so sure that decisions that we must necessarily take must be dictated by somebody wanting to dash us money, which is far less than we have spent, and we could have done things in a more, shall we say, measured way without having to rush.
So you think that we could have let the money go?
Well, I've just said we have spent 12 billion, and I'm told it will rise to 20 by the time to finish. I'm not sure how many dollars, if you use 5, I'm talking about $4 billion as opposed to 500 million. Most of this money would go into certain consultancies, which I'm not sure will end up benefiting Ghanaian consultants in the main. But I think that we should have really taken the decisions because we think and we know that we need to address the issues of ECG management and challenges, but not because somebody is coming and dangle 500 million. After all, we spent 12 billion.
Quite an argument you make there. But now, does this then present an opportunity for us to do things more carefully?
I don't see the opportunity. I think there's a necessity now to do things more carefully. But this is not the only issue. There are a lot of issues to deal with the transfer of the concession to PDS. And maybe it is time not just to deal with this issue, but to resolve all the attendant issues to do with adequate financial guarantees and tariffs, etc., etc.
What are some of these other issues? Can you go into them for us?
I think it's mainly to do with whether the tariffs that PDS feels are adequate to start the operations have been provided, and I think that relates to the issues of payments to the IPPs and power producers, etc. And I hope that all those issues can be resolved.
And these
so
are
that when the suspension is lifted, everything is back on course.
And these are some of the issues that have led, we understand, to the increase in Tesla and are having to pay $500 million over a period for power that we are not using.
Well, I'm not sure our power that we are not using, because that takes us very much to the subject that we wanted to discuss. I'm not sure our power that we are not using, because let's separate the several power purchase agreements that we've signed over the last 10 odd years, most of it in 2014 and 15, from the actual operation of power generation systems. I say this because the emergency power that was procured, mainly Car Power and Ameri, which started operation during the Dumso, should be separated from all other PPAs that were signed. And the reason I say this is this. If we went for an emergency power because we thought we needed them and we needed them, the basis of PPAs such as emergency and most of these normal PPAs is that the IPP involved will bring a generating piece of equipment to us. Then we are required to provide the fuel to power the equipment that they have brought so that they can provide us with power. Now the IPP says, listen, I am prepared to keep producing the power as long as the fuel comes. But if you do not provide the fuel, then I'm going to charge you a fee for my equipment sitting idle through no fault of mine. That's what you call the capacity charge. If you contract an emergency piece of equipment, it should be of such capacity and of such duration that it should run all the time that it is there. But anytime you're unable to provide fuel, the capacity charges will come in. That's the emergency. Then there is power that was contracted after the 2007 crisis when President Kufuor went for the first Eurobond of around $700 million, and certain power plants were contracted. Those power plants started were being built when Professor Mills took over. And there was 3.5 going to 4 years in which the government literally put a stop to those power plants and said, we are doing value for money checks. Indeed, that is what led to doing so, because a lot of those power plants could not be ready in time to take the place of the Volta Dam when the water ran down. So once those power plants have become ready, how many of them have become ready, then it's incumbent upon us to start taking power from them. Then there is a third group, which is the enormous number, because I've sent you a table this morning, which you can share with your readers and listeners and watchers. There's a whole raft of power purchase agreements entered into in 2014 and 15, which, apart from the emergency powers of Car Power and Ameri, are of dubious value and dubious need, because you only contract power in relation to how much your demand projections are. And I'm not sure that anybody has sat down at the time to critically do an analysis of our forward projection demand to warrant that kind of capacity addition and PPAs. But the good thing about that is that if in 2017, as the government intended, I think it would have been too early for most of those to have started. And so at the beginning of 2017, they could have been cancelled. And we were told that many of them were going to be cancelled. So I'm not too sure as to what now constitutes power being generated and not being used. And we need to get better particulars on that. So the issue is that if you go and contract an emergency, what you do is that you do it for a duration that you think is reasonable, normally of the minimum the provider wants, and then you make sure that your negotiations in terms of its operation is such that it comes at a very reasonable cost. It will be, because emergency, more expensive than the normal power generation and tariff. Right. But you should still be a bit more mindful about the overall cost. I contracted an emergency power system. I don't know if you are old enough to remember what was called the SRP that made so many fuss.
Yes.
But it was not different from Ameri. But because of the manner of the contracting, which was open tender, and the manner of its operation, where we decided that because VRA already had a thermal department, we would let the thermal department run the power with a little training. It finished up costing 1/3 of what Ameri has called Ghana. So these are the things that influence some of these things in terms of the overall cost of what comes out at the end.
Right. Doc, that is one of the points that I wanted to raise, because you contracted that PPA, and it was supposed to supply power through VRA, right? In this case...
we didn't contract it wasn't a PPA. What we did was that we rented the units from GE, so that we could, but they were the same type of units that were eventually brought in as Ameri. And we had our thermal department going to run the units, so that we didn't have to go and employ a third-party operator, which would add on to the cost. And we chartered it for 3 years, not 5, because we felt that the problem would have been dealt with in that time. So there was no PPA, there was a rental agreement, but it's the same capacity, and it finished up costing per delivered kilowatt hour 1/3 of what Ameri cost us.
So
I think the manner of the procurement, open tender, and the use of independent operators or third-party operators did have an effect. But I think the important thing is that once we contracted Ameri and Car Power, and they started producing, then you had really, you don't have a lot of room left for saying that you will cancel the contract after it has been signed. I think one can ask the question: was it necessary to move from 250 original contract for Car Power to then go to 450? So really, one can question a lot of the 2014, 2015 PPAs. But there's also been, that was of the former regime, but I think there's also been too much delay in terms of inaction from this part. I cannot believe that anybody is talking about power we do not use when there's been too many frequent incidents of doomsaw when the capacity is ostensibly twice what the peak load is. So it doesn't make rational sense to say that somebody is producing power that we are not using and we are still sleeping in doomsaw. So I think clarity needs to come in this matter.
So the power is not really being produced, because that was the argument.
Let me put it in layman's language. You can go and buy a car, but if you don't put petrol in it, you move it. The capacity is there, but without fuel, you cannot generate power. And I think that we made this point very clearly in the public seminar that Joy organized, which I chaired, that the real problem, apart from the lake downturn, was the problem of fuel, challenges with West African gas pipeline, the challenges with fuel to run Asogli and Asogli 2, etc., etc., etc. Once we have the responsibility to provide the fuel, anytime we are unable to provide the fuel, there's problems that power is not produced, and also capacity charges then kick in.
Right, so that's being understood. The question I was asking was why the PPAs were signed with ECG in the first place. Isn't that curious, considering the fact that GridCo exists in the system which transmits power to ECG?
Well, you have brought a very important structural problem that we have encountered and has developed since around 2007, 2008. In Ghana's power system, the VRA was responsible for all the planning and contracting for generation. At the time that I was at VRA, it was transmission, which is now called GridCo, was part of VRA. And that power was produced and then given to ECG to distribute. At some point, we decided that we would invite IPPs, and so that we could be seen to be transparent and not favoring VRA or any state-owned asset. We set up GridCo from the VRA's transmission department. And then the unfortunate things started happening. The Ministry of Energy, instead of allowing VRA to do the planning and contracting of a new generation as and when the country needed, started pushing its own agenda and trying to sign PPAs with ECG, probably because it felt it would get its way easier with ECG than VRA. And so suddenly you had ECG signing a raft of VRAs, of PPAs, and then getting the effect on his books of this largely inefficient operation. And so you find that Car Power has signed an agreement with ECG and not VRA. I think Ameri was forced on VRA, but there's been a serious problem developed where the ministry, instead of being a policy initiator, has now turned itself into a contractor of PPAs on behalf of ECG or VRA. Those things need to be very, very, very seriously checked. Otherwise, we are heading for doom, in the sense that nobody has got any responsibility for ensuring the proper planning of generation requirements in this country. And if you look at the 2014-2015 PPAs, almost inevitably they all signed with ECG, not VRA.
So you're painting a picture that the control that government exerts over ECG and VRA contributed to what happened in 2014-2015, where we signed so many.
It's not so much as the control. I mean, it's the ownership.
Okay.
But the change in the methodology for planning and contracting new generation, that is what has been the cause. Because, VRA, since its inception, had a system planning department so that they would provide the necessary requirements for generation. Later on, the Energy Commission came into play, and therefore the two would work hand in hand. But you now have a situation where the policy-making body, now tries to become an implementer by being the initiator of too many PPAs instead of allowing VRA to provide sound technical advice, and then allowing VRA, as it used to do, to run open competitive bidding. You find that the raft of all these PPAs that were signed were sole sourced, which may account for the unnecessarily high expense in terms of the tariffs and capacity charges that have come out of them. So I think there are lessons for us to learn for the future.
Definitely. I'm getting a number of comments from listeners who say that the fluctuations in power supply that they saw under the ECG regime may come back. Is it possible that ECG, because of PDS's independence, ECG may not be as efficient as PDS?
I don't think so. I think I said somewhere in the beginning that you are dealing with the same personnel, effectively. When you want information from PDS on why your area has been switched off or where it's deemed so, I'm sure that you call William Boateng just as you did under ECE, and just as you do now. So the personnel won't change. The operations will not change. The influence of PDS has not been entirely taking root, and unless this whole brouhaha lasts for too long, I don't expect that very much will change at all.
Dr. Charles Reku will be with us on the Super Morning Show. We've been joined on the phone lines by Dr. Theo Acheampong. He's an independent economic consultant. He joins us on the line from Edinburgh, Scotland. Good morning, Dr. Acheampong.
Good morning, Daniel.
Great. So it's 24 minutes past 8, and we are having a conversation about the power that you get, which is the reason why we are working here at Joy FM. And you have a radio you can listen to us on, or you've charged your phone, how you're following us. PDS has ceded control of the energy sector, the power distribution sector, back to ECG because of the questions with the guarantee that they presented when they were taking over ECG's equipment. Dr. Acheampong, first of all, your initial comments on this matter. Of course, this came in way after the initial conversation we're having, but how does this strike you?
Thank you very much, and good morning to you and your listeners. Reading through the whole PDS and then the privatization issue relating to ECG, the statement that came out last night was quite surprising but not shocking in the sense that some of the writings were on the wall for some of us who have been following development in the sector. So when you go back, about a year, and you read through the companies that were bidding for the concession, at a point, one of them being the EDF Viola, they pulled out because they had issues with the 51% local content requirement being demanded by the state. And then subsequently, one of the other Chinese entities, DXC Energy, also, had to file a lawsuit actually in court over potential conflict, of interest, and that was thrown out. So basically, it was left with only Meralco and their, local partners at the end of the day, and the government also oblivious to the time and the constraints that NEDA was pushing on, had put on them, and the timelines had to be stuck to, had to give the concession out to Meralco, which then meant that some of the due diligence that needed to be done, to ensure that the paperwork or the guarantees provided were, up to scratch were not done. So I'm not surprised that some of these issues have come up subsequently down the line.
So you're agreeing with Dr. Rekubobe then that the deadline that we were staring at and the pulling out of these companies has contributed to where we are now?
I mean, yes, partly to an extent. But remember that the process itself started several years ago, I think 2015, 16, thereabouts, and we were meant to have completed it within the timelines that were given. What then meant is that we should have, in part, done our homework. But, as sometimes is the case, you can see clearly that, something went awry somewhere within that process. And we're now back to the drawing board. But as the statement says, this is being suspended, not necessarily cancelled. So I'm hoping that will be resolved, in due course. But at the end of the day, it was only one competitor that was really left, and they were forced to an extent to hand the concession, over to them because the other ones pulled out.
Well, we actually started in 2014, but what do you believe we should have done that we did not do?
Daniel, just correct. The MCA2 was signed by President Kufuor last year.
The MCA2 was signed last year.
No, President Kufuor last year, 2008.
President Kufuor last year, 2008. Yes, yeah. Thanks for that, for stepping in there. So, Dr. Champo, that question still of what should we have done? You said that we should have done some homework that we did not do prior to even the change in policy in 2017.
No. So what I'm saying is what should have been done is just, the basic due diligence and the checks that, would often accompany signing such a concession agreement. And, if timing was an issue, of course, we could have gone back to the U.S. and to NEDA to, ask for a bit of an extension, also given the change in the government, over the time. But clearly, what you can see from the development is that we did not do, our homework, and it's come back, biting us.
A lot of opposition arose to this entire concessionary agreement when it was first announced and when a government made it clear at the time that we would go into it. Do you think that that sort of railroaded the process and that's why we had to rush it in the end, if I can use that expression?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there would always be opposition to such, concessions and such agreements, particularly, from the likes of the labor groups who will be worried about things like, like jobs and job security. So that is to be expected. And in any sort of planning process, you accommodate or make room for such opposition and how you resolve them along, the line. Number two, I think that the timelines that we actually had, to complete this process and get it, over and done with was actually fairly adequate. But it comes back to the point that when some of the concessionaires who were bidding or wanting to operate the project, pulled out, and then there were the subsequent legal issues that all in part led to the delay, and the company that was left the one left standing was literally forced to be handed, the asset.
So, Dr. Shampo, now that we are where we are, do you agree with the sentiment that this would not make a difference in the power that comes to our homes, considering the fact that it's basically the same staff of ECG who moves to PDS and who would definitely have to move back to ECG?
I mean, in the short term, it won't make any difference because, as you rightly pointed out, and as Uncle Tarzan also said, it's the same ECG and it's the same people anyway. However, in the long term, what we know is that the energy sector, more broadly, and specifically the electricity sector, is not financially sustainable. And the Achilles heel in all of that is at the distribution end, where over 25% of power produced is actually, lost, either technically or commercially. So that's what we need to resolve, and that is what the concession agreement was, in a way, meant to do with new investments coming into play. So in the long term, the issues are still there. The issues of the financial viability of the sector needs to be resolved. We need investments. We need new billing systems. We need smart billing systems. And that is what has to be, addressed in the long term. But in the short term, this wouldn't really have any material, impact on the power that people get.
Let me go back to Dr. Kwaku Bogbeh for his thoughts on this. Doc, do you think this can get back to a point where we need to do a new RFP and try and get other investors involved in the concessionaire?
You see, there's a presumption there which I do not like. Nobody has said that the concession winner is incapable of doing the job. And indeed, the little I've heard about their performance so far is that they're doing the job reasonably well and making some progress towards loss reduction. So in the short term, or even in the medium term, I think what will bring back Dumsor is if we are unable to provide the fuel to power the plants that must run to ensure that there's more than the peak load that we need at any material time. And so we need to go back to the warning the IPPs gave about the fact that they might stop producing electricity if they don't get paid for it. Therein lies a real challenge. And the issue, that's why I raised the issues of tariffs and in terms of whether PDS thinks that it is getting the financial returns that were promised it to enable it to make the investment. And I believe at some point there was some attempt or some definite action not to pass on the money to ECG so that IPPs will be paid. Because, we pay our tariffs to whoever is doing the distribution. So the short-term challenge and even the medium-term, it's whether, in fact, the fuel will be there to run the plant. And that's why, for example, I was very disappointed when the Car Power 250 went and the 450 came in and didn't go straight to Takoradi, so that it will benefit from the gas which was being produced from ENI, which had to be ingested because there was no taker for it. There are a number of problems which both governments of the former and the current have slept on the job instead of taking very quick and decisive action. At the time that the Mahama government left, negotiations were taking place to reverse the flow of the gas pipeline so that gas from the west could be pumped to the east. At the time, it was envisaged it would take 6 months. It took almost 2.5 years, and I'm not sure that it is completely through now, so that the plants at Tema will be fed with gas, which will be free from the oil fields, rather than importing very, very expensively at over millions of dollars every month. So there's a lot of drama, But if they overcome the little problem that they've gone to the Dubai or wherever to address,
Qatar.
Qatar, those other challenges will still need to be resolved and resolved quickly.
Yes, I was actually asking because if that Qatar trip is unsuccessful, what becomes of our bid to hand over ECG to have private participation in distribution of power in the country?
All that will happen is that we'll go back, as they say in the army, Azoya. We'll go back to square one. We will not have the benefit of the 500 million American money because the time has expired. But I don't see that as a real problem. I will say it again. If we are prepared to spend up to $20 billion on banks, energy is more important to our development than the money we've pumped into the banks. So it shouldn't be a real challenge. I think we may have to live with the psychological problem of that we like freebies and one freebie has gotten away. But we have shown that we have the capacity, when the challenge comes, to invest our own money. Let some of that investment go where it can actually be productive to make us richer.
Dr. Champong, do you agree with the sentiment that we are better off letting this go if indeed we find that things don't work out in Doha?
I'll come to that quickly, but I just want to add something to what Uncle Wekubobi said, earlier on the fuel cost. Look, the thing is that when you look at the demand projections, even for 2019, we'd have to spend a little over $1 billion USD, so that's roughly about $87 million every month just to procure fuel, and that is either natural gas or heavy fuel oil for the likes of of car power. And luckily, I heard this weekend that car power has actually set sail and is going to dock in Takoradi, and that will be using part of the gas that is coming from that enclave. But as part of, siting of the plant, we need to, as fast as possible, and I know they're working on it, complete the East-West interconnection, project, because that then means that you can actually use the gas for generation instead of using the more expensive, liquid fuel. Second quick one on the gas, which makes me a bit more worried, going into the future, is that if you look at the scenario, we've actually contracted a little in excess of 700 million standard cubic feet of day of gas by the mid-2020. But when you look at the demand projections and what will be needed for power generation, we actually wouldn't need anything more than 450 million standard cubic feet of gas a day. And most of this can't be satisfied at the moment from the gas that we've got offshore. So I'm talking namely Jubilee and the Greater Jubilee Project, 10, Sankofa, and then some of the gas that would come from Nigeria. But in the same time, we've also signed, I say we as in the state, relatively expensive LNG contracts, which are coming in around $10 to $12 for every, million British, thermal unit. The gas that you've got from Nigeria and, offshore Ghana is around $7 for every, million British MMBTU. Therefore, in the long term, when you add all of this together, even if, you had gas as your main source of, fuel supply, and you're augmenting that with LNG, it means that the tariffs are not necessarily going to go down anytime soon. So that's the two quick things that I just wanted to, add to that. Now, going back to the question you asked me, that if this doesn't work at all, i.e. the PDS concession, then do we go back to the drawing board? I would say, yes, we go back to the drawing board, but the fundamental issue is that we need to invest in ECG. It's a question of, do we get the money from external sources, from MEDA, from other investors, or are we prepared to bite the bullet and use some of our own resources internally to fix the mess? And that's a policy choice that has to be made. So remember that we've used about, we so far the net arrears in the sector is a little over 2.7 billion, USD. That's roughly 4.7% of Ghana's GDP. And it is similar to the amount that was actually used in bailing out, the banks, which Uncle Rekubobe rightly alluded to. So are we saying that we cannot find the money to fix the mess, or we have to go and, rely on external parties and sources to do that? But I would leave that at the policy, doors of government.
What about finding other means of private sector participation? Because again, the argument was made that this is not just about money, it's also about efficiency, and having government control or own the assets that is ECG could hamper its operations.
Yeah, but you could have a mixture of them, so nothing precludes the government from having minimum equity, in ECG set up through a special purpose vehicle. And there's, the local pension funds, the tier 2, tier 3 pension funds that, may have some money, some infrastructure funds that are also, lying idle locally in Ghana, but also, wider externally in Africa and in emerging markets that are looking for a return. So a mixture of creative financial means could actually be deployed, in a way of trying to get the investment in, but also getting the technical, people and the expertise up to improve ECG's operational, efficiency. At the core of it is that, yes, it needs finances, but ECG itself needs to be fundamentally restructured, to become a much more effective, power distributor.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Theo Acheampong. Let me take the final word from Dr. Rekubobe on the other line, and then we wrap up with today's conversation with our two energy experts there. So, Dr. Rekubobe, finally, moving forward, you mentioned this on a number of occasions as to how we should, in the short term, rectify the our power generation capacity challenges that we have. But moving forward, what immediately should we do?
Immediately, the LNG contract. I heard from Theo that the car power is moving west. I thought in 2017 certain decisions had been taken PPAs which were not under commercial agreement yet. Those need to be cancelled before we get ourselves into any more problem. I mean, I say this because this LNG thing is very troubling. It was signed in 2016, could have been cancelled in 2017, but we sat around for another almost 3 years until maybe things have gotten too far. So the problems are, as I said, the management problems of ECG must be dealt with. In the short term, I don't think that this little hiccup will affect what we are doing, except that we must make sure that we get the fuel to the plants that we've already contracted under capacity charge arrangements. I don't think one should simply talk about cancelling these things that we already entered into, because it has implications for judgment debts and future investments by foreign investments. I don't know what specifically we are talking about power being produced that we are not using. I've been out of the sector for too long to know which is which, but I'll be very, very, very skeptical about that particular statement.
Doc, I just got a question from a listener asking that what happens now to the media funds now that the PDS concessionaire has been suspended. You suggested earlier that if the Doha trip is not successful because the deadline has elapsed, we could lose that 500 million, which you won't break any sweat over.
I think that informed the word suspension instead of cancellation. Because if it had been cancelled, almost certain that what portion of the media funds that had not been dispersed, which is a considerable portion, would have been lost immediately. Plus, of course, they need to ensure that our assets at all time before they are passed on to somebody, have the requisite protection and insurance. But I'm not too worried about meter funds, as I've said to you.
Yeah.
Because we have blown 14, by the end of it, 20 billion of our own money in trying to rectify the little defects of our bank. The energy sector is the most important sector in any development. If you go to any country, there's a direct relationship between the amount of energy, commercial energy used, and its GMP and its wealth, and therefore its standing in the world. So if we want to be a developing and a strong economic country, we must invest in our energy sector. There's no two ways about it.
But after this drama of last night, do you think anyone should resign?
Now you are getting me into politics, which I retired from years ago. The question of who should resign or who shouldn't resign, I think, should be left for the time being.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles Rekobo.
You're welcome.
I'll go to Dr. Theo Acheampong for his final thoughts on the matter. So, Dr. Acheampong, you agree that the MEDA deal is something we can do without?
Hello?
Yes, Dr. Acheampong. In your final words, answer for me. Do you agree with Dr. Rekobo that this is a deal that we can do without?
Oh, I think so. It's a deal that we can certainly, do without. Because look, nobody would really come and fix this country for us. We have to be able to fix it ourselves and deal with the issues ourselves. Much as we welcome the support, from our development partners. The buck stops with us, and we need to, address the issues with or without them. So yes, I agree entirely with that. But just two quick points just to add to that. I think we've said about the need to diversify, our fuel sources. We need a competitive tariff structure that actually allows industry to consume more and pick up the latent demand. Because as you look at the numbers, industry actually consumption is tapering off, as one would actually expect that to pick up. And therefore the residual demand is not being utilized. I think the third point really quickly is that government should actually pay its bills. The MMDAs who owe a lot of money to ECG for the power they use, that should be paid. And then in the long term, we need to fix the infrastructure issues. For example, getting the reverse flow going, getting maybe a second onshore pipeline, to connect east and west, and then evacuating some of the gas potentially up to the mines and in and around, Kumasi to create the industrial demand that we need. Yeah.
Right. But those debts that government owes ECG have been ring-fenced. So right now, it's not really a problem of the distribution company, is it?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
I was asking that since government has ring-fenced those debts that it's owed, it's not really hurting the energy sector now, is it?
No, the ring fencing of the debt is not what is owed to ECG. That's under the ESLA. That's a separate treatment, where the energy sector levies are brought into an escrow account, and that's used to service the bond that they issued. I'm talking specifically in relation to the electricity that the MMD is consumed, and often there's a long delay by the government in paying ECG or PDS for that electricity. I think that also contributes, to the indebtedness of ECG and its inability to pay the IPPs.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Theo Acheampong. He's an independent economics consultant. We also had on the other line Dr. Charles Rekobo, who is a retired engineer and former VRA boss, this morning on the Super Morning Show. So we had our experts agreeing on these key points. Number one, this is as a result of a delay in our executing this entire concessionaire deal in the first place. We should have started this thing way back in 2014, 2015. We ended up rushing towards a deadline of March 2019. Else we will lose $500 million. Both of our experts also agree that the $500 we rushed ought not to lose in the first place is money that we can do without, because according to Dr. Champong, we can control our own destiny, and according to Dr. Reku Brobe, we have spent more than $4 billion. We are ready to spend more than $4 billion on saving the banking sector. But bottom line, because it's mainly the same staff who at ECG went to PDS and are back at ECG, this should not affect how you get power in the first place. But the real question is the question of our supposed excess capacity. I use supposed in quotes here because there are questions about whether the power is being generated. The excess capacity issue and the issue of excess gas, where we should be looking at. So there ends the big energy debate. Okay, your comments are welcome now. 0302-216-541, 0302-216-541, ECG or PDS. And what's your expectation now that ECG is taking back control of power that is supplied into your homes? Are you satisfied with the explanation that, we were rushing towards a deadline, so some of the due diligence we should have done was not completed? We'll be right back to get your answers. Stay with us.
Welcome to 21st Century Service Provision. Need to pay your ward school fees?
Thanks, Daddy.
Want to flex that girl?
Wow, he's so cool.
Grandma needs airtime to fill me in on all the village filler.
Hey, me be a guy.
Or you're just tired of having to hop from app to shortcodes to website and back. Welcome to the new phase of buying, selling, and connecting with customers. Welcome to convenience and technology. Welcome to My GH Pay, myghpay.com. Make or receive payments online from anywhere using a Visa card, MasterCard, GH Link card, or your mobile money wallet. Businesses, associations, institutions can get listed for free today and enjoy a new world of convenience. Download My GH Pay for free from Play Store and App Store. myghpay.com. Buy, sell, and connect. The platform for everyone.
I believe that I can be all of the best, whatever I do, guaranteed to take the lead.
On Vodafone Cash, it is impossible for anybody to defraud you, as all transactions are initiated and authorized by you. If you know, you know.
The future is exciting. Ready? Comfort, durability, finishing, quality. Choosing sofas and beds for your home, office, or hotel couldn't be easier with an exclusive range of sofas and beds in various designs and colors from Latex Foam. There is so much choice, whatever your budget. Latex Foam, your partner for life.
Charlie, where are you?
Boss man, I'm at the bank.
Really? But your car is in front of your house.
Bro, my bank on my phone, Charlie.
Oh, how?
EcoBank, bro. With EcoBank mobile app, I can do everything, anywhere, anytime. Listen, I just checked my account balance, paid Ahmed's school fees, and sent money to my grandma at Walwale.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Masa, just download the EcoBank mobile app from the Google Play Store or the App Store, or dial *770# and be your own bank manager.
Manager.
Whether to pay bills or fees, to check account statements, send money across Ghana, abroad, and more, EcoBank mobile app has got it covered. EcoBank Mobile, making everyday people live everyday lives the EcoBank way. EcoBank, the Pan-African bank.
So you wanted that weave, that one that's so long it touches your toes. Got it. A disco light for the room when the sweetheart comes over. Swoon your matrona. Bagged it. Those chrome spinning wheels that will have people at church praying to be you. But them. Now, how about those mega woofers that will wake up the whole neighborhood? Ordered. Because you've got the card that makes it all possible.
You don't need a bank account to spoil yourself. You can now securely load funds for travel, pay for goods and services online and at your favorite shop, or give your loved ones unending spending options or possibilities with a perfect gift card. Get a Cowbank prepaid card now, because you can.
Cowbank, forward together.
Hip, hip. Hip hip hooray! Malcolm Big 30 anniversary sale. The Malcolm Big 30 sale is on and juicy. Oh say yeah. Walk into any Malcolm shop and you will get up to 30% discount on thousands of items. Lalo. Hear them one say for 30 years of support. But remember, terms and conditions apply. Malcolm, where Ghana shops.
Coffee in your cup and joy on the set. The Super Morning Show is always the best bet on Joy 99.7 FM.
Four minutes to the top of the hour here on your Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. My name is Daniel Dadzie. Thanks for staying with us. We just got off the phone with Drs. Theo Echampong and Charles Reku Brobe. Key takeaways from that conversation. What you heard last night about ECG taking over PDS is as a result of the delay in the execution of the concessionaire agreement, or the Millennium Challenge Compact, I should say. Government after government delayed too much in executing this, and so we had to rush towards the deadline of March 2019 in selecting a concessionaire, and also because we wanted to do 51% private sector participation, well, a local participation in the concessionaire. A number of the companies pulled out and were left with just Meralco. And as a result, some of the due diligence that we should have done could not have been done, according to our experts. And that's why we are where we are. What kind of due diligence was done with this agreement in the first place? If an anomaly is identified, shouldn't a number of days be given? Was this done? Was MEDA consulted on the suspension of the contract? So who is going to bear the cost of this suspension? Or there's no cost at all? And how is this suspension going to impact the other support we receive from MEDA? All questions we seek answers to this morning. We are opening the phone lines now. 0302-216-541-0244-340-437. PDS or ECG. And who do you think is really responsible for where we are now? The Vodafone Bosu offer just got bigger. Aside the Bosu weekend offer, Vodafone has taken another boss step, introducing the Bosu daily offer, the Bosu of all the daily offers. Sign up to the Vodafone Bosu daily offer for 2 Ghana cedis and enjoy 100 minutes for calls to all networks, plus 100 megabytes valid for 24 hours. Yes, it's real power. Just dial *5588 hash now to subscribe to the Bosu daily offer and spend your day like a boss. Are you looking for a 1, 2 or 3 seater and L-shaped sofa crafted to the finest details and available in various colors for your home, office or hotel? Are you looking for comfortability, durability, quality and perfect finishing? Look no further. Latex Foam is your one-stop shop destination. Whatever your choice, whatever your budget. Latex Foam, your partner for life. 0302-216-541. Eden Heights has a 1 to 4 bedroom apartments and penthouses with the highest grade of finishing. Locate Eden Heights at West Hills, close to the beach resorts along the Atlantic Ocean, about 30 minutes drive from the airport and 5 minutes walk from the West Hills Mall. Eden Heights is a new destination for luxury. Visit us at edenheights.com.gh or email sales@edenheights.com.gh or call Mavis on 050-153-1445 for more information. Eden Heights, welcome home. My first caller is Papansa, calling from Tishiningwa Estates, but of course today's agenda is brought to you by Societe Generale. Good morning, Papansa.
Good morning, Commander. How are you, sir?
I am blessed. Yourself?
Oh, by His grace, I'm doing well.
Beautiful.
You see, first of all, I think ECG ECG is better than PDS. For the past weeks, what testing we've gone through under PDS, Master, it's not easy. You go and buy credit, you swipe it on your meter, your lights are off. You go to PDS office, they will tell you, because they don't have the software to upgrade for the increment, they have to change your meter. It took me 1 week. I was in darkness 1 week before they came. When they came and fixed the meter, it's left with my refund of the money that I paid. Master, up to now, even the meter that they came and fixed, I have to bring the animal out of me over there at the Lekman office before they came and fixed. Up to now, this morning, I'm going there for my refund. So I prefer ECG because government have to allow ECG to work on its own. Because this partnership doesn't work. They don't know our terrain.
Thank you very much, Papansa, for calling us from Teshinungwa. Sam is on the line from Tessano. The question is 0302. The number is 0302 216 541 0244 340 437. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Dan. Yeah, Dan, thank you for the opportunity. Daniel, look, Ghana is in total mess right now. And if you live in Ghana and you don't agree that the country is in mess, then I don't know, you have questions to answer yourself. Dan, like Dr. Rekubobe was saying, look, energy, we need energy. And it's the hallmark of development. We need energy for everything. And now we even add the internet service, the telcos to it. Then, look, I live in Tessano. In Tessano of all, in Accra, Tessano. And I have to be changing my network just to get this thing service for my internet services. I need to walk. I live about 100 meters away from the police station, and I need to walk away like a kilometer from my house just to get internet service. And to think of that, I don't even know what the words to use, has been increased, and we lead them to charge exorbitant prices. They charge us so much, and they can provide that services that we need.
Interesting concerns there, Sam. I think that the charges there and the provision of the services, of course, is something that we can take up with the Consumer Protection Agency and the Chamber for Telecommunications, and of course your telco as well. But Emmanuel is calling from Big Ada. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning.
Yes, please turn off. Is it a TV set or a radio set by you? Please turn it off so we can chat. Let's hear you. So ECG or PDS?
Hello, is it better now?
Much better. Let's go on.
About the excess power that is being generated that is not being used. We did a survey in even bigger area here. There are a lot of people who need electricity extension. Why are they not giving the power to the people to use? You want to acquire meter from the then ECG or now PDS. The difficulties you pass through before getting those the meter, you cannot bear it. Then you are then saying you are generating the power and you are not using it. Why people need electricity in this country to use? Shops, houses, hotels need electricity extension, they are not getting. So why? And then you are paying for it, and then you are saying because somebody has signed an agreement, you are not using. Use it. The thing is there, use it. Most part of this country lack electricity extension. We did a survey in Big Adan area here. About so many thousands of meters are needed. So why are they not using it? That's my contribution this morning.
Thanks for contributing, Emmanuel. Thomas is calling from Somenya. Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Mr. Daddy. How are you?
I am blessed. You seem far away from your telephone.
Oh. Hello?
Yes, Thomas, you seem far away from your telephone. Please get closer to your phone and raise your voice. Yeah.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's a bit clear. Let's go on.
Yeah, I just want to re-emphasize your question that you asked Mr. Dr. Rekubobi. Whether health must rule. So let's find out who did that mess. Who got us where we are now today? Who signed that agreement? And now that you are saying that they are going to do due diligence, as they are going, who is going to bear their cost? Mr. David.
Yes, sir.
I have said that health must rule.
Yes. Thank you.
Health must rule because this is a very great mess. And as they are going to cut out, who is going to?
Unfortunately, we seem to have lost Thomas from Sominga there. Let me take the last caller. Bright is on the line from East Legon. Good morning, Bright.
Good morning, sir.
Great, Bright, let's hear it.
Honestly, I think the agreement, I think is concessionaire with the PDS. It doesn't help matters at all. In actual fact, prior to their assumption, the agreement before it took effect, when ECG was operating, I was running a very small office. Every month I did pay 150 Ghana cedis during ECG's era. As soon as these PDS people came, every 3 days I'll go and buy the 150 Ghana cedis, and then they will tell the power, the credit will just get what run out. I rushed back to their office. The only excuse they kept giving me was to the effect that their software wasn't picking my system. These people had really plundered us. They did a lot of things that had not mattered, and that has not helped to advance the cause of the citizenry. So it is very fortunate. We are so much happy that they have perpetrated fraud on us, and for that matter, government has decided to cancel this particular contract.
Right, government has not cancelled the contract. We've suspended it.
It should be cancelled outright, completely. And going forward, government must be very meticulous in the kind of people they do engage. They are perpetrating fraud on the citizenry. Things are not going on well. They shouldn't come and be using faceless organizations to be plundering the states in addition. So after every 3 days, I was paying 150 Ghana cedis, something I was paying 150 Ghana cedis a month.
Guys, did it take, when you took it up with them, what was their response?
I've been going Legon ECG, now it's PDS. I've been going there, rushing over there, complaining to them. All that they kept telling me was the fact that their software wasn't picking my system. They couldn't read my distance. And I need to operate in my office. That was what they were doing. They are fraudulent group of people.
Bryce, thank you very much for calling us. 8 minutes past 9 on your Super Morning Show. Enjoy 99.7 FM. Corruption Watch comes up next. But before we go there, Barclays Absa Group Limited has a lot in store for SMEs in Ghana. Absa is interested in supporting African businesses, specifically SMEs. We can help them grow by providing finance capacity building and financial literacy programs. We've supported over 140,000 SMEs and individuals across Africa. Welcome to Absa Group Limited. Absa, proudly serving you in Ghana as Barclays. MTN Momo is celebrating 10 years of making life simple by giving away 10 brand new Hyundai cars in the MTN Momo at 10 promo. And for the month of June, Rebecca Quay was the lucky winner of the Hyundai Grand i10 2019. Keep using your MTN Momo account to build points and win exciting prizes like Samsung Smart TVs, up to 3,000 Ghana cedis in eCash, or one of the brand new Hyundai cars, including the all-new 2019 Hyundai Santa Fe, from now till the end of August. Remember, promo winners will only be called with 0244 for 300,000 to redeem their prizes. Dial star 120 hash to check your points. Terms and conditions apply. Go on, just Momo it. We there for you everywhere you go. We'll be right back with Corruption Watch. And today on Corruption Watch, we are interrogating the finance minister's claims that The PPA, by reviewing contracts that were either sole sourced or procured through restrictive tendering, has saved the country 2.75 billion cedis. Have we indeed saved that amount? That's what we're discussing on Corruption Watch. Stay with us.
From importers to exporters, direct to indirect workers, you